Okay, welcome everyone. We have completed the 7th chapter of Daniel. Daniel was in a vision and he saw symbols, right? Several symbols. And in that symbols, each of those had a significance. And we have seen that in our last meeting, how each of those represented something. Now, the important concept of Daniel that we have to understand is that there are certain things that are repeated in Daniel. Okay, so Daniel, the book of Daniel follows a principle of repetition and expansion. Okay, repetition and expansion, meaning that in the 2nd chapter of Daniel, there was a vision. Okay, who got that vision in the 2nd chapter of Daniel? King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel interpreted that. And in those, certain details were given, right? The head of gold, things like that. Same thing was given in Daniel 7 also, right? So Daniel 7 as well, right? The vision of 4 beasts. They represent the same thing. The lion, here is Babylon, there it was the head of gold. But it is repeated here, but more details are given. So whenever it is being repeated, there are additional details, expanded details that are being given, right? And therefore, it is not for no reason that they are being repeated just in a different animal is used. And people wonder, why are the same things? If those represent 4 kingdoms, these represent 4 kingdoms, right? So when it is repeated, there are some additional details that are being given. So that's what we saw. If you see the entire chapter of 7, what are the additional details? We see in heaven, we see how the sanctuary service is there. We see there we have legs of iron, which represent Rome. Here we have a terrible beast that is trampling everybody, right? And has sought to change the times and laws, right? So those details are not there in the 2nd chapter of Daniel. Similarly, in the 8th chapter of Daniel, we will again see some of the same kingdoms, but some additional details will be given, right? So so shall we start with the 8th chapter of Daniel? Okay. All right. So let us begin with the 8th chapter of Daniel. Can somebody read from 1 to just 1 and 2 actually? 8th chapter of Daniel, 1 and 2. Somebody wants to read? Can read.
రాజు బెల్షస్సరు ప్రభుత్వపు 3వ సంవత్సరమందు దానియేలును నాకు మొదట కలిగిన దర్శనము కాక మరి ఒక దర్శనము కలిగెను. నేను దర్శనము చూచుచున్నప్పుడు నేను ఏలామను ప్రదేశ సంబంధమగు షూషానును పట్టణపు నగరులో ఉండగా దర్శనము నాకు కలిగెను.
Thank you. So in the 3rd year of reign of the king Belshazzar, the vision in Daniel 7, when did it come? It was in the 1st year of King Belshazzar, right? So now, please answer this. Who is King Belshazzar? Is he a Babylonian king, Medo-Persian king, Greek king? Which of those? Babylon king, right? So he was the last king of Babylon, right? In fact, his father actually was the king, King Nabonidus. but he was the son, but he was in charge because his father used to travel quite a bit, and especially the Babylonian province, he was in charge. And so Daniel mentioned Belshazzar as the king. And so the day-to-day affairs was taken care by Belshazzar. So Daniel did not make a mistake. Daniel was working directly under Belshazzar. And so that's why he said reign of King Belshazzar. So what was it? To me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time, which means in the chapter 7, I saw in the vision, and it so happened when I was looking that I was in Shushan, the citadel, right? Citadel are, like a capital, like one of the key cities, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai. So if you see the Babylonian kingdom those days, this is the map of the Babylonian kingdom, right? Can you locate the province Elam anywhere? Right, the province Elam, right here. The actual Babylon city is here, but this was also a very popular place where they had a huge palace, a secure fort in Shushan. After the Medo-Persians took over, Shushan became a very, very important place. In fact, the Medo-Persian kings preferred to remain in Shushan. They made it their capital, right? And so that was a developing city. And so Shushan is, in his vision, he found himself to be in Shushan. Now, there are people who believe both the ways, right? People who believe that, he was in Shushan physically when he got the vision, or in his vision, he was in Shushan. No, both of them are possible. There is no much significance one way or the other. Daniel was a high-ranking government official, and so he may have been sent to, on government work to another major city. So if he went there and there in the night, if he got a vision, also that is a possibility, right? But whatever it is, his presence, physical presence, or his presence according to the dream was in Shushan, right? An important place. And there was a river that is running by that citadel called River Ulai, right? And that is there till today. The Medo-Persians, when they took over, also incorporated that particular city, and they, in fact, you see this, they made it one of the major cities, right? A star indicates the major cities. So Shushan became an extremely important city for them. In fact, much later on, when Queen Esther and all of them come, all of those happen in Shushan, right? And so Nehemiah, all of that is in Shushan. So but that is during the Persian kings, the Medo-Persian kings. So he was there and having a vision. In that vision, it says, then I lifted my eyes and I saw there standing beside the river Ulai, was a ram, which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other. And the higher one came up last. Okay, so can you see any similarity between this and something that we studied in Daniel 7?
Beast-like thing.
Yes, exactly. So we studied about the beasts. The first one was a lion, which represented Babylon. The second one was a bear, right? But the bear, how did it look? It was raised on one side. It was raised on one side. Okay, and then it had how many? It had 3 ribs in its mouth. Correct? You remember that? And so here you see the same thing, just depicted in a different way. He saw a ram. It had how many horns? 2 horns. And the 2 horns were pretty high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up after the other one. See, this detail is missing in Daniel 7. Like I mentioned, right? Repetition and adding more details, expansion of details, right? So, and I saw the ram pushing west, north, and south, in 3 directions, because 3 different kingdoms were conquered. That's why it had 3 ribs, right? But this chapter also gives us those directions. which way he went and then conquered. So when people are trying to understand 7, when Bible scholars are trying to understand, if they look at 8, they get more context, right? Okay, so the kingdoms they conquered, one was towards the west, one was towards the north, and the other was towards the south, so that no animal could withstand him, nor was there any that could deliver from his hand. But he did according to his will, and he became great. Basically, that there was no army that could resist the Medo-Persian Empire. This ram that we are talking about with 2 horns represents the Medo-Persian Empire. Why did Daniel not see the lion or the Babylonian Empire anymore? You see, the Babylonian Empire was going away very soon. Belshazzar was the last king. In a few years, the Babylonian Empire would go away. So he saw in Daniel 2, that was the beginning of the Babylonian Empire. You see the difference, the beginning of the Babylonian Empire. And so he saw the head of gold and the beginning of the reign of Belshazzar. He saw a lion. But now he's well into the reign of Belshazzar. In a few years, Belshazzar is going to be killed. And so he no longer, Babylon is not relevant anymore. The next kingdom that is going to come are the Medes and Persians, Media and Persia, right? The Media and Persia, if you look at the history, the Medians were the first kingdom. The Persians came up after that, but the Persians became stronger than the Medians. Though their kings and all of that, they were forming much later. Their kings under Cyprus especially became, not Cyprus, I'm sorry, Cyrus the Great, right? He became extremely great, and then he went and even conquered the Median places. But he was good to them in a way that he did not really, subject them to his dominance, but he partnered with them. And that's why that empire is not just called the Persian Empire, it was called the Medo-Persian Empire, right? Because he also had some relatives in that area, in those places. And so to placate them, right, so that they will not feel like they are now subject, and then now they have been under the rule of the Persians. He said that, I will keep the rulers of the Median. I will not remove all of them and put Persians. I'll keep them, but I am the emperor overall, right? So that's why the Persians came later on, but they became higher than the Medians. Does that make sense? Okay. And then they were pushing in which directions? West, north, and south. If you look at the map, this is very interesting. How biblical history actually matches reality, right? You see, higher than the other, although it came later than Media, Persia became dominant power when Cyrus defeated Astyages of Media, right? But this all happened in 553, 550, not yet where they came and conquered Babylon, but in 539 it was conquered Babylon. After that, right, they defeated everybody. And the Medes, however, were not treated as inferiors or as subjugated people, but they were treated as partners. That's why it is always called the Medo-Persian Empire. So it went in which direction? West, south, and north. Cyrus conquered Lydia, right? Lydia was towards the west. Babylon, Lydia and Babylon, right, towards the west. Cambyses extended the conquest south into Egypt and Nubia in 525. And Darius went north against the Scythians in 513. You see, these are the 3 major directions in which the Medo-Persian Empire went. And then under different kings, but they captured that particular territory. If you look at this map, you will see here, right? Where do you see Lydia? See, this is the Median Empire, right? Media is here and Persia is here. So this whole thing was the Medo-Persian Empire. And so this side is east, this side is west. So towards the west is Babylon. Some more towards the west is Lydia, right? So they conquered all of this area. Lydia, all of this, right? Towards the north they went. What do you see towards the north? Scythia, right? So this area of Scythia also was conquered. Towards the south, what do you see here? Egypt. So they went all around here. Whatever you see here, all this area was conquered by the Medo-Persians. Right? This area was the Medo-Persian Empire anyway, but after that they conquered all of this. North, west, south. Okay. So, and they came up to India, right? Some part of India. That's why you hear of Persian culture in India as well. Okay, and then as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came. So that was a ram. See, this was the ram with two horns, right? One horn is higher than the other. Suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between its eyes. Right? So what, you know, when you say it was going across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, what does that tell you about this goat? When something is going without touching the ground, what does that tell you about the way it is going? It's going really fast, right? When something is going really fast, it kind of raises above the ground, right? Because of the speed. So the speed at which it was going, it was not touching the ground. That is how fast it was coming. And it wasn't coming, it was going across the whole earth, which means it was conquering everything and had one horn, right, between its eyes, which is the next kingdom that came, you know, from the west. Which one is the westmost kingdom that you see here? Greece, right? And who was the emperor of Greece? Alexander? Alexander the Great, right? Alexander. He was coming towards Medo-Persia from here, right? All the way he came, right? Literally, he came all this way and then he came off to India as well. Alexander the Great. He, and without touching the ground, meaning very, very fast. All his conquest happened within a few years. In fact, Alexander died at 33 years of age after having done everything, you know, and so he was such a young guy. In his 20s, he started conquering. That is how powerful this guy was, right? And so that goat, that male goat represents Alexander. In Daniel 7, we see that Greece was represented by another animal, that is leopard. That leopard is also known for speed. Here, goat. Goat is not known for speed, but a goat coming without touching the ground basically portrays that this came very fast. Then he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram, and he was moved with rage against him, and attacked the ram and broke his two horns. What do those two horns represent in the ram? Media and Persia, right? So why he had only one horn? Alexander dominated. He was the emperor. There was no second one in the Greek kingdom. Alexander and Alexander only. That is how he ruled. Alexander the Great, that was a title given to him, right? And so one horn, that was sufficient. It broke the entire empire of Medo-Persia. The Medians and the Persians, both were defeated. And there was no power in the ram to withstand him. Right? The Medo-Persian kingdom that was so vast by that time also had to, bow to the power of Alexander, right? But he cast him down to the ground and he trampled him. Right? This was not just a normal, defeat. It was a major victory, right? A crushing defeat, as they call it. And there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. Just like how the ram had earlier come, and then how it had conquered Babylon, similar way, the Greeks came and then conquered Medo-Persia. Okay? And then what happened? Therefore, the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, four notable ones came up toward the four winds of heaven in all directions, right? Four winds of heaven is always four directions. And out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land, right? Very, very important here. This male goat represents Greece, right? And it became very strong. Notice, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken. You know, when you become strong, how can your horn be broken? You know, the Alexander was at the height of his power when he died. Actually, he was not weak, right? He died out of some poisoning, something that happened, right? But he was not killed. It was something he ate or he drank, something like that. You know, so but nobody defeated him. Right, so he was at the height of his power. There's something he drank, some poisoning, food poisoning, or some fever, something he got, and then he died, sickness. But he became so strong, and at that point, you know, his power was taken away. Now, in its place, there was a place, four notable horns came towards the four winds of heaven, which means the four directions they came. And out of one of them, in one of those places, there was a small horn, a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land, right? So what does this mean? When you remember in even in the case of the leopard, right, it had four horns that came. Here also, there are four horns that come up. There were four generals inside the company of Alexander. After the death of Alexander, his empire was divided in all kinds of directions, right? So his generals were Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus, right? Those were his generals. Four of them divided it into four parts, right? Antigonus was a commander in his army, but he only had this area for a very, very less time. After some time, Seleucus took it over, right? They killed this guy, Antigonus, and then he took it over. Some part, Seleucus, I think some part went to, I think, Lysimachus. So the main people, the four people, Lysimachus, Cassander, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Four of them divided the great kingdom of Alexander. You see here how much it has grown from here all the way. So those four horns, large horn broken, four horns, right? And then what did it say? One of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great towards the south. Whenever we say out of them came one more, it means that is the next kingdom. After Greek, what is the next kingdom that came? In history, after the Greeks, who came? The Romans, right? The Romans. That little horn represents Rome, right? It became exceedingly great towards the south, towards the east, and towards the glorious land. Wherever you see this word glorious land, holy land in the Bible, it always represents Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Palestine, that Israel, that is the holy land, that's the glorious land. So remember, south, east, and glorious land, right? Towards the south, what was in the south? Egypt. In 30 BC, Egypt became a Roman province. Rome conquered Egypt. towards the east. We see here, this entire thing is east. This is Seleucus' empire, right? What happened? The Seleucid Empire lost its westernmost lands to Rome as early as 190 BC and finally became the Roman province of Syria in 65 BC. That's why you find Syria in this place, right? Near Iran after that. But it became a Roman province, the entire Seleucid Empire. Glorious land always refers to Jerusalem or Palestine. Palestine, the whole area of Palestine was incorporated into the Roman Empire in 63 BC. Okay, so in 63 BC, that also became a Roman Empire. After that is when Jesus was born. Jesus was born in 4 BC, right? And so when Jesus was born, he was born in Bethlehem, in Israel, in Judea, which was under Rome, right? Judea was a Roman province. Galilee was a Roman province. Samaria was a Roman province, right? All of these things, although they are all in Israel, but they were under the control of Rome. So this little horn went towards the south, got this land, went towards the east, and went towards the glorious land, right? These were predicted long before these things happened, right? And then what did it do? And it grew up to the host of the heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. You know, Daniel 8, it grew up to the host of heaven. It gained that much importance, growing up, almost gaining an importance like a god, right? And it will cast down many people who come under its influence, come under, the mighty, the holy people also were cast down. People who believe that there could be mighty people who are strong in their faith also were cast down. The hosts, the stars, these are supposed to be heavenly people, right? But they were also deceived by Rome. Rome, this little horn represents two things: the pagan Rome and papal Rome. First pagan Rome, and then it grew into papal Rome, right? And so that is the history of Rome. And so really, it became first a political power, then it became a religio-political power. Today, Rome is Vatican City is a religio-political power. He even exalted himself high as the prince of the host, right? See, this one is very, very important. The characteristics of the little horn match the characteristics of Lucifer. What did Lucifer do in heaven? What was the war that took place in heaven? Long before man was created, there was a war in heaven. Lucifer claimed that God was unjust, right? And that they were not being treated fairly, the angels, and that Lucifer did not have the right place in heaven. Lucifer wanted to be elevated like Jesus. Lucifer envied the place of Jesus in heaven. And so Lucifer wanted to be like God. Jesus is God. So you see here, even this power will do the same thing. He even exalted himself high as the prince of the host, which means this power also will claim the place of God. Right? And by him, the daily sacrifices were taken away. You know what are daily sacrifices being taken away? In the Old Testament, when the sanctuary service was set up, what did the daily sacrifice actually point to? What was the significance of the daily sacrifice? The people coming and presenting a lamb, and the lamb being slain, and the blood, being taken.
Forgiveness.
Yes.
Sins.
Forgiveness of our sins through blood of
the
Lamb, who is Jesus.
Jesus.
That is the significance of the daily sacrifices. Now, by him, the daily sacrifices were taken away, taking the attention away from Jesus Christ's high priestly and sacrifices, that because all the daily sacrifices were all pointing to Jesus. You know, the people that were saved under the new covenant, right? We once discussed, right? Old Testament and New Testament. Do you remember? Right? We discussed the Old Testament, New Testament, Old Covenant, New Covenant. Yes? Are we saved under the Old Testament or the New Testament? Can anyone answer that question? Are we saved under the Old Covenant or on the New Covenant?
New covenant, but
We-
with the.
We are saved under the
New
New
Covenant,
Covenant, correct?
But
Right? But what about the people who lived in the time of the Old Testament? Or wonder what covenant are they saved? Were they saved under the Old Covenant or the New Covenant? See, salvation has to happen under a covenant. You do this, I will do it for you. That's an agreement. God never said that my salvation is unconditional. No matter what you do, you will be saved. No, there is a covenant. Bible says there is a covenant. I will make a covenant. If it's called Old Testament, New Testament, it's called Old Covenant, New Covenant. So in the old times, where God did not still make the, let's say, the time of Moses, the time of Abraham, the time of Noah, how are they all saved? They were also saved under the New Covenant. They had no idea about the New Covenant, but they were saved under the New Covenant. Do you know that even Adam and Eve are saved under the New Covenant? You must be asking, what do Adam and Eve even know about covenant? Right? During that time, they had no idea about that, about Jesus, about the sacrifice, about sin. It is very interesting. Even in the Garden of Eden, when they sinned, what happened after they sinned? Adam and Eve, that day, the next day, when God came to visit them, were they able to face God? No, they were hiding, and God was saying, "Why are you hiding?" Right? And they said, "We are now ashamed to come in front of you." For they discovered who they were. What was the next step that God did for them?
covered
He covered with what?
the leaves.
They covered with the, but what did he cover them with? What did he make for them? Anybody knows that? He covered them with goat skin. There was a sacrifice that was made. For sin, there was a sacrifice that was made. And that skin was brought and then he made for them clothes with goat skins. From the beginning, from the first sin till now, it was all because of that same concept of sacrifice. The only difference is, at that point, whatever they were doing was symbols and pointing to Jesus Christ. They were looking forward to Jesus. We look backward at what Jesus did. They were looking forward towards what Jesus was going to do. The daily sacrifices also had no meaning if Jesus did not come to this earth and then fulfill it once for all and become the sacrificial lamb, after which those daily sacrifices were not needed. Right? But taking away the daily sacrifice means taking away the significance of Jesus Christ as our mediator and taking his place as the mediator. Removing the focus from Jesus and turning the focus to your own self. And the place of his sanctuary was cast down. The sanctuary once, I think one of the last meetings, you can refer to the videos in the past, has the significance of the sanctuary. Every article in the sanctuary represents something. Like the water represents purity. The lamb represents Jesus Christ. The incense represents our prayers going up. All of that, his sanctuary was cast down, which means the significance of all of those things diminished under the power of this little one. And we see how the papacy did that in a very, very structured manner. They have eliminated the significance of the sanctuary. and eliminated the role that Jesus Christ had, the focus on the role. And because of the transgression means sin, because of his sins, an army was given over to the horn. Whose army will be given over for sinful people? The army of God or the army of the devil? You know, devil also has an army. Do you know that? Right? You know, in the in one of the instances that we saw when Jesus Christ was casting out demons from people, there were legions. Legions is 6,000 people. Legions were there, which means Satan can afford to put 10 to 15,000 angels for one person. That many angels are there. Army of angels can be given just to deceive one person. Right? But we don't have to fear, because the Bible tells us he who is inside you is more powerful than he who is in the world. Right? All of those things don't compare to the power of God. Right? And so we don't have to worry that there are 10,000 angels of devil that are trying to put me into sin in all these directions. So an army was given to oppose the daily sacrifices. That is what Satan will do. When you're turning in the direction of Satan, right, he gives you an army so that you can fight against God. And he cast truth to the ground, and he did all this and prospered. He cast all truth. Truth is the word of God. Right? Truth is the gospel of Jesus, casting truth to the ground. That is exactly what happened during the 1260 dark ages, those years. We have seen, right, how laws were changed, times were changed, people were persecuted, and the truth, which is the word of God, right, was completely trampled upon, thrown to the ground. And anybody who questioned was killed, was punished. And he did this all and prospered for a time. For many years, hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay? And then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, how long will this vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of the desolation and giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled under foot? Now, 13 and 14 are related, right? This is going to take some time. I'm going to explain this thing, but basically, one person inside that vision is asking another person, how long will this be? Right? Concerning the daily sacrifices, give me a timeline. How long will these sinful things be taking place? Right? Because, you know, how long will the daily sacrifices take place? The whole year they will be taking place, right? Except the one day, the Day of Atonement, right? On that day, the sanctuary gets cleaned up, right? And then the next year again, it's a different, another cycle. But how long will this go on for, right? So for that, there is a timeline that is given. Right, said to me, for 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Right. So what is this 2,300 days? When does it start? When does it end? How do we know what kind of events have taken place to indicate that the sanctuary has been cleansed? What does it mean by sanctuary being cleansed? Does it mark the beginning of a new phase, right, in the plan of salvation? All of that we're going to see in the next meeting, right? Very, very important, right? So definitely be there. Next week, we're going to see that. I'll show you some timelines. I'll show you some charts as well. Amen. Thank you very much.